And then he asked me, was she good looking? I said, I understand that this sounds funny to you because I am a 6 foot something guy coming and reporting a sexual assault from a female. For you, you find it funny. I said, but if the roles would have been reversed, I would be in handcuffs right now.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Bunny Hugs and Mental Health. I am your host, Todd Rennebaum, and I've got another wonderful episode for you this week. This week it's with Emmanuel Flores, and he is a mental health advocate and a new author. His book is called Men Get Raped, and I'll let him explain what it's all about. He also talks a lot about men's mental health and misguided masculinity. It's never toxic masculinity, it's misguided. It's like masking, and you'll hear. It's a good conversation. And we're going to listen to that conversation real soon. First, I just want to say thank you so much for SUN, that's the Saskatchewan Union of Nurses, for sponsoring this episode, and just for being nurses and being so wonderful. I've spent time in the hospital throughout the last while with mental health issues and addiction issues and stuff, and I've had nothing but amazing nurses every time I stay somewhere. So thank you so much for nurses, and thank you for everything you're doing through the pandemic and everything you're doing now. Also, next week I'm speaking with Collier Landry, and he is a podcaster, and he's a movie maker, and he's also, when he was a kid, he heard his dad murder his mother. His documentary, A Murderer in Manfield, is all about that, and his podcast is called Moving Past Trauma. You can check both those out. That's next week. And also Sunday, April 2nd, I am doing an Instagram Live with Jason Ferentz, and he's also a podcaster, Rainy Days Podcast, and he was a guest on the podcast here once, a while back, a young British man, and that's going to be at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. It's going to be a good conversation there. And Monday, April 3rd, I'm speaking with Tim Jodgin, and we're going to be talking about sobriety and fitness and how that's helped his mental health and getting sober, and that's at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. So make sure to follow me on Instagram, Bunny Hugs Podcast, and check out all the lives there. So as you can hear, there's lots of cool things coming up, and but for now, without further ado, I give you Emmanuel Flores.
Yeah. Like the idea is to send that message, right? Like when you see the cover page of the book, it like technically says men don't get raped, but we've crossed the don't, so it actually like you can read it, men get raped, and it's mainly because I think whenever we think or hear the word rape, we immediately associated men raping a woman. And I don't think a lot of people associate the fact that men also get raped. And in fact, there's many cases of men have been raped either in their childhood or in their adulthood. And we don't talk about it enough. And there's not enough information out there or even spaces for most guys to be able to just come out and speak about some of these traumatic experiences.
Mm-hmm. So is the book about your story in particular, or do you talk with other men?
Yeah, so it's about my story in particular. I was raped as a child. I was 11 years old and attending grade 6 at a Catholic school in Mexico. So I was a victim of a sexual abuse there by one of the Catholic members of the school, and it was something that I kept quiet for many years of my life. It's one of those things that you don't speak about, that you just don't bring it up, right? One, because you don't want to relive some of the events and have some of those flashbacks that will come and definitely haunt you and haunt most of the people that is victims of this kind of crimes. And no one talked about it. No one really mentioned it. And without giving too much of the book, the reason why it's called Men Get Raped, it's because as a child or as a teenager during my years in high school, there was another kid at school that made that comment while we were in class and said, oh, we were talking about it, and then men don't get raped. And that, it was kind of like, I put away for so many years the feelings and even the vivid memories, or at least tried to hide them from the world. And hearing that make me feel, whoa, so does that mean I'm not a man? Because I did get raped, and I was a victim of that, right? And for many years, I tried to still push it under the rug and not try to bring it up to the surface, and not let anyone know about this, or at least be involved in that part of my life. And now, as an adult, I've came to realize and also learn the amount of people that has the same faith that I had, and the amount of men that have the same faith that I have, but we just don't talk about it. And I attribute that to the fact that there's lack of spaces, as I mentioned, where we can talk freely about this. So the book talks about my experience as a victim of a sexual assault, as a kid, or as a victim of rape as a kid, and then it also talks about my experience growing up in a world where men are supposed to stay quiet for all these different things. And I also speak about an event that happened in my adulthood years. It was another encounter with a sexual abuse. In this case, in this time, it was from a woman to me. And I tried to talk about that. Tried to talk about some of my feelings. I'm very raw and very open on the book, because I feel that's kind of what we need. And what I expect from it is to help other men realize the amount of us that is out there, and that we can freely speak about this, and that it helps with our healing.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's very courageous of you, because, yeah, I don't know too many men that do talk about this. I mean, I've been in and out of, group therapies, and I've talked to some people on the podcast that some of the guys do talk about the childhood stuff, but very, very, very few men talk about being an adult and being sexually assaulted by women or by other men. Yeah, that's fairly uncommon. And I have to admit, like, even when I was younger, that seemed outrageous to me, that what, a woman can't rape a guy. It's like, I'm kind of old school, but that was the thinking at the time. And even though it kind of sort of happened to me, I was sexually assaulted when I was 18 years old from a boss and an older woman. And I mean, she just made out with me or tried kissing me while I was really drunk, but still, I mean, it could have gone further. I even then, I didn't really consider it sexual assault. I just thought, because I was the one that got in trouble. She hardly got any trouble at all. So yeah, it was kind of a double standard.
And that's the main problem, is that we never consider some of those things to be an assault. But the reality is that if the roles would have been reversed, you will be the one in handcuffs, or you will be the one in trouble, because then it also all of a sudden becomes a big problem, right? And we do have a lot of these issues. Like, there's an organization that is called 1 in 6. And what the organization does is actually openly talks about all the men that have been victims of sexual abuse, and either in their childhood or their adulthood. And some of their stats that they come up with is that 1 in every 6 men out there suffers or has suffered some kind of sexual abuse. And in the military, for example, in the United States, there's a lot of cases that have been coming forward. I mean, since 2015, a lot of different things have been coming forward of many men and women as well, in plenty of women, but many men that have been victims of sexual abuse by some of their superiors. And they're not topics that we really talk about. And the main problem, again, I bring up is that men have this wrong stereotype that we shouldn't be talking about any of this, that we shouldn't be expressing ourselves, that it makes us weaker. And that's some of the things that I talk about in the book, is that for many years, for me, knowing that in the back of my mind that I was raped as a kid, it almost kind of like put my value down. And if we were to have a scorecard of the points that we have to accumulate to be considered a real man, for me, that put so many points down on the scorecard. It just honestly made me feel I shouldn't even be considered a man because that's not things that happen to a man, right? And now imagine talking about it. It will take even more points down. So I can't speak about it. But then what happens? It's then all of a sudden you start bottling all this up together with all the things that as men we already bottle up. And obviously that causes depression, that causes a lot of anxiety and suicidal thoughts and all the side effects that come with bottling everything inside, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my goal now is to try to help other men understanding that there's no need for us to keep anything inside. There's no need, it doesn't make us weaker at any point in time to share and to open up. In fact, I do believe that a man that understands that sharing, it's a strong thing and it's a brave thing to do. In my eyes, it becomes more of a real man than the ones that bottle everything up and don't say anything, because that's almost like now, like, at least for me, it's the easy way, the easy route. Keeping everything inside is the easy part.
Yeah. I 100% agree that not because I'm open and talk about stuff, but it really does take more courage and to be more of a man to talk about this stuff than it is to just not talk about it. 100%. I 100% agree. Do you think so? There's a lot of suicides in men between 40 to 55 years old. Do you think a lot of those men have had traumatic events, aren't talking about it, bottle it up? It bubbles up at some point, right? Trauma does not just go away if you bottle it up. So do you think maybe that's a big issue with men in that age group, why they're feeling suicidal?
I mean, when you go by, like, you just go by the statistics, I mean, pretty much 80 to 75% of the suicides that happen worldwide are men. And when you make it and you consider how many minutes there is in a year and you consider how many men commit suicide, it's almost one per minute. And I do attribute men committing suicide to the fact that there's so many traumatic experiences and so many feelings that we got to keep inside. At least I know that I never became part of those statistics, but I was on the route of becoming part of those statistics of men that take their lives every year, right? And why? And because I couldn't speak about it, because I couldn't share it with some of my friends or and not because I couldn't, but because I didn't feel safe enough, because I didn't feel like I could share without being judged. And maybe my friends wouldn't have judged me, but unfortunately, we have created this stigma that it kind of doesn't, it prevents you from sharing. So I do believe that a lot of men commit suicide, and a lot of these men commit suicide because of these things. They're afraid of all the burdens that are put under their shoulders and all the responsibility that is put onto us. And then when we don't feel up to it, when we don't feel like we can do it, there's no way that we can express it. So yes, I 100% believe that it comes that the men that take their lives has to do with the fact that we can't speak about any of these things.
So I just released an episode last week, I think, but by the time this one airs, it'll be quite a few episodes away. But I kind of mentioned that I wasn't raped, but I had some sexual trauma. It was child on child, so I don't feel like I was a victim of a perpetrator per se, but there was definitely some trauma there. I never talked about it until like this year, and I mean that was like decades ago, and I'm not one to keep things bottled up, so yeah, I've kind of come out and talked about some of this stuff a little bit. And one of the reasons I didn't ever talk about it, because you said there's that stigma, and I'm going to use some slurs here, but like when I was younger, if I would have gone to someone else and said, hey, this happened to me, I was so scared of being called a fag or a pussy or, basically have my life ruined because I talked about it. Like, that's how scared I was that someone would find out. I mean, I was walking, like, not on eggshells. I was walking on glass for like years, worried that someone was going to find out or something would be said, or because I literally thought my life would be ruined. And maybe it would have been at that time, but now it's like I'm at the age where it's like I could feel safe now that I can talk about some of this stuff.
And I agree 100% with you. It's definitely a mutual feeling. For many times, not only was I afraid that I could have been called gay or, as you mentioned, a faggot and whatever. Not only was afraid of that, it was also the fact that we don't, unfortunately, we don't have a real proper sex education between children or adults, and especially men. Men, we don't learn really about sex from our parents or from our fathers, especially. And what happens is, for a long time, at least the way I looked at it, is porn becomes our teacher, and the porn industry becomes our teacher on how we should behave on the sexual relationships. So, unfortunately, because there is no sexual education at all, even, for example, for me as a teenager, many times the thought of, well, what if I'm gay? What if the reason, like, what if the reason why I never acted? Because when this happened, I was just I froze. I mean, I'm an 11-year-old kid. I was already big enough that you could say I could have at least done something. And for many years, I blamed myself for not having done anything, because I just stood there frozen and allowed my perpetrator to do whatever he wanted. And then after, as a teenager, a lot of the questions that will come in my head is, maybe the reason why I didn't do anything was because I liked it. Maybe it was not because, maybe it's not because it was a bad thing. Maybe it was just because I'm gay and it was fine. But the problem was that there was no one talking about, like, sex education, and talking openly to us men on some of these things. So my biggest fear, yeah, it was that. For many years, I thought, well, either I'm gay, or if I'm not, which I think I'm not, because I really like women, then everyone else is going to think that. And we know that there's a few things that can really hurt a man's ego. One, it's to be called a pussy or gay. The other one is to be called a girl. And it really will hurt us to be, oh, you punch like a girl, you do this like a girl, or you're gay. And is that stigma that being a girl or being a gay, or being any of these things, means that you're weak. And we cannot be weak. We have to be strong. We have to be the rocks. So anyone finding out about these would have made me weak, and would have, like, unfortunately, sometimes even when you can open up, some things come out to the light and then become public, and then not everyone will be as welcoming as some of this to some of these things, right? So that's the biggest fear. It's just, all of a sudden, you're gonna be called gay, and you're gonna be called a girl, and they're gonna make fun of you, because we make fun of all these things.
Yeah, I can 100% relate about that part where it's like, it actually, and it is, I mean, this is oversimplifying it, because it is so fucked up, and you're a kid and you're just trying to deal with the terms you're given. And yeah, it is a bit like, am I gay? And is it, like, I questioned my sexuality after stuff happened, and it was like, but then, yeah, like you said, like, but then you're like, but I'm not attracted to men, like, at all. I'm attracted to women. So then it's like this spiraling and this constant, like, who the hell am I, and what the hell's going on, and am I weird? Am I normal? Am I? It's completely fucked up. And I'm talking old school terms right here, right? Like, I'm not, if my kids were gay, I have gay friends. I feel like I'm nervous that gay people will be offended about what we're talking about here. But as a straight man,
I mean,
it is nerve wracking, especially 30 years ago.
And you know what? I've had conversations with, not about this, but I've had conversation with some of my friends that belong to the LGBTQ plus, like, groups, and I know that some of these things happen, even, like, they're very common within, like, for example, men. that are gay, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we still don't speak about them.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like about opening up ourselves to this, it helps many groups, not just the cisgender men, not just the gay men. I definitely don't mean to be offensive to anyone. That's how I felt. And not because I believe that being gay now it's a bad thing. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it was not that. It was just that back then it was not seen, as you mentioned, as something that is socially acceptable. And I would rather be dead, or at least back then, I would have rather like almost be dead than being categorized in some of these things, because it's it's so scary. You know that within men, they can torture you mentally about some of these things with the bullying and everything. And you don't want to be part of that. You don't want to be categorized as any of these labels. There's already many labels that come to us, and all of a sudden have one of those labels, it was just not fun. So for me, that was something that really concerned me. And if somebody would have talked to me about this and explained to me, for example, in my case, it's not that I liked what happened to me or that I enjoyed it at any point in time.
Mm-hmm.
It was just that I was frozen and I couldn't do anything for myself. Maybe if there would have been more help, like more professional help, to reach out to me and explain me, no, that's not the reason why you didn't do anything. The reason why you didn't do anything is because you simply couldn't move, because in that moment your brain entered in a panic mode and you couldn't do absolutely anything about it. Then I wouldn't have even questioned my sexuality at that point. I would have reached out for more professional help to make me and help me understand some of this factors and help me heal faster. But it was just not the case. So what was the easy route? I mean, well, what happens when a man has sex with another man? Well, they're gay. So then what that means, I'm gay. And that was the first thing that I questioned. And the first thing that it came to always my head. Eventually, as I kept growing up, I said, well, no, I do not belong. I'm not part of that, because I did definitely, one, I didn't like it. Two, I don't like men. So what am I? Because men don't get raped.
Mm-hmm.
So what am I? In what category does that places me?
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't fit inside the box. I don't meet all the criteria to be considered that. And that was, at least in my head, that's the importance of speaking about all of these things and and other men understanding that there's not a real box, there's not a real standards. Those are all like created by our society that unfortunately oppressed us and makes us do certain things or be certain things that we not necessarily should be doing, or that we all should be doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. Since you have been open and talking about this, have you had some pushback from other men, and like, negative comments?
Not yet. I do expect that at some point it's gonna happen. But I do know, and I guess in a inner circle, whenever I speak about men's mental health, and whenever we have conversation about the roles that men should play or not, there is sometimes pushback from even some family members, right? The idea, not necessarily about the rape situation or the openness about these things, but some men truly believe that we shouldn't, or that we don't have it in us to be emotional, or we don't have it in us to be empathetic with others, and that women are the ones that are caring and loving, and technically us, we're here to work and to just provide and have the strong face, and even when we speak to our children, that the moms are the ones that are usually better and saying nice words to them and speaking softly to them, and for us it's more like we're okay, you do this, you do that, and that's it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think there is a lot of pushback for certain men, especially on the aspect that it makes us weak, and that apparently we're emasculating men by allowing them to be free and to be emotional. And I think there's a big confusion into what some of us, I guess, are trying to do. For me, I'm not trying to make men weak. I'm trying to empower men to gain their own voices, to understand that we can speak about our feelings, and that doesn't make us weak. We can be caring and loving to our children, and that doesn't make us weak. We can be caring and loving to other human beings, and that doesn't make me, including other men, and that doesn't make me weak. Not because I hug my best friend, a male best friend, or I'm emotional with him, or I can share certain things with him, that makes me a gay, or that makes me weak, or that makes me a girl. That doesn't make me any of that. It just makes me an empathetic human, compassionate human that cares about others and not just about myself, or not just my own well-being, right? And or that it wants to fit so desperately inside this box that society and our system has created, that is willing to hurt other people as long as I fit in there.
Is it different in the Latino community? Is it worse, that kind of, that perspective, or is it about the same as Canadian?
I think in certain areas, yes, it is worse. I mean, in my country, it is still very persecuted. The idea, for example, like being gay, right? Like many gay people fly or just escape Mexico for fear of their lives, right? And because they're not very welcomed. Many men have this very wrong stigma. Just to give you an idea, when my mom is a twin, and in this case, her twin moved to the United States when I was born. While her twin was living in the United States, decided to do the transformation of like becoming a he, and he did everything. He never felt like a woman, or at least that's the information I have. But the point is that he never felt like a woman, so he went through the transformation and he became David. He used to be Diana, and he became David. To make the story short, when my dad found out about this, my dad prohibited my mom from allowing us to keep any kind of relationship with David, or he will always call her Diana, because what if it's contagious? And then all of a sudden we become gay as well, right? So it is worse in many ways. It's not that I haven't encountered in the other parts of North America, like Canada or the United States, men that think this way still up to this day. But I do feel like the macho man mentality, it is very rooted in the Mexican culture or the Latino culture, as you mentioned. I definitely do think is worst in many ways, including the way we treat women, for example. I mean, not for anything, Mexico has one of the highest rates of femicides than some of the other North American countries or even Latin American countries, because just simply the way we treat women, and the macho culture is just so deeply rooted that it's almost like we don't give and respect women the same way we respect other men.
Interesting. Has your wife been really supportive, and have you opened up to your kids about this, or how old are your kids, I guess?
So, I mean, the first question is 100% yes. Yes, my wife has been very supportive. We met in high school, and we've been together almost now 14 years, or well, over 14 years. So she's been very supportive with the whole aspect of mental health and traumas and all that stuff. Like, I think she has pulled with more bullshit than she should have. But I thank her for that, because that has been the reason why I've been so empowered to pursue my healing and pursue some of this like self-discovery and acceptance. So yes, to that question. And then the question, my kids, my oldest, who is 11 years old now, knows about this, and I've been open with him about it. And my two other ones I haven't had the conversation with them yet, because I find them still to be a little young for me to open. I don't necessarily know if they're going to 100% understand. Maybe I'm wrong, but they're 6 and 7. So I've been trying to just hold on that conversation with them. But one of the reasons why I also had to have that conversation with my 11 years old was because, as a parent, you always get asked, can I have a sleepover here? Can I have a sleepover there? And I've always been very against it. And for, I guess you could say, valid reasons. But unfortunately, I believe that sometimes until you don't know the family, maybe, or the friends or whatever that they're going to sleep over with, it's just a little bit, at least for me as a victim, it immediately makes me question and worry about what could happen. And always, you almost see the wrong on everyone, or at least in that sense, because I want to protect my children not to go through the same thing that I went through, right? So I had to be open with him about that, and tell him why was I always kind of like denying some of the sleepovers that he was like desperately asking me for. And I am very glad that he was very mature and empathetic with it, and he understood where I came from. And since then, things have changed. Obviously, there's been some bonds that we created with certain families where I've allowed him that, right? But now there's been that level of trust. But yeah, so, and my kid has been, my son has been very supportive. In fact, like when he found out about me writing the book, and he's, every day he asks, are you done with the book? Is it ready? Is it ready for sale? And he's been very supportive. So that's actually been super cool.
Nice. Has this experience, or did that experience affect your religion, your faith?
I mean, yes, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, back then, immediately when it happened, I blocked myself and became what I used to call myself, an atheist. And I said, well, I don't believe in any God. I don't believe in anything that has to do with religion. And for a very, very long time, I blocked myself to the fact of even talking about religion or simply having any conversation about it, because yes, it affected me deeply. I couldn't understand, and I still cannot understand how some of these crimes are basically committed in almost the name of God, right? And I know that some people will make the claim that, well, those people are not really God followers, and I completely understand that. I believe that anyone that does anything like that doesn't necessarily have it inside them. But I also believe that they've been victims of the same crimes, and most of the time that makes them do some of those same things, right? So I came to forgive now the person that did to me and that raped me. And I almost came to be empathetic, because I know that this guy was part of the Catholic religion. He was actually on school to become a priest. And now I come to think of how many times was he maybe raped? How many times was he being part of this same culture? And maybe that's the reason why he was doing it over and over again, right? It's not necessarily that he was a bad person, but maybe it just became a normal thing. And now when we see out there how many cases have come out of the Christian schools, or Catholic schools, sorry, how many cases have come out about kids being raped. I mean, a couple of years ago in Quebec, there was a report about 500,000 cases of kids, including girls, but majority men, that were victims of sexual abuse in their childhood by the Catholic Church.
Just in the province?
Just in the province of Quebec.
Wow. 500,000.
So, yeah, 500,000 kids. And those are the ones that are reported. Doesn't mean that they're all of the ones that actually have suffered any of these crimes, right?
Yikes.
Registered nurses are on the front lines of this nursing crisis right now. I feel like we don't have all of the resources and the tools and the staff to ensure patient safety 100% of the time.
Everyone is trying their best, but it's not sustainable the way we're going right now. There needs to be something changing.
The nurses across Saskatchewan need to be involved in conversations with the government to try and find solutions. We have ideas, we just need to be involved.
This has been a message from the Saskatchewan Union of Nurses.
So for a long time, this affected my religion. I am still not a follower of any kind of like Christian, Muslim, Judaism, like any kind of religion. I believe there is some kind of power that has given us life, but I do not name it God or name it any of the names that the religions give it to this superpower. First of all, because I also, even within the religion culture, at least in my opinion, I believe there's so much macho man mentality. And even the fact of believing that our God has to be a masculine or a male instead of a female. I mean, female, like women are the ones that bring life to this world. And why is it that it's not a woman? Why is it that it's not a female? Right. So within my family, my wife and I have come to this kind of common agreement that we almost, you could say, live this pagan life where we believe that our God is Mother Nature. And it's the trees, the everything that is created, right? So, but it deeply affected my connection with the religion. And I think it opened my eyes to see some of the main things that happen all around within the world of the religion. And there's many crimes that happen like this that we just simply don't speak about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my dad used to work with sexual offenders, and he said all the time that they're not necessarily bad people. They're just reliving their traumas, and like this is what they know, and it just turns into this cyclical, almost generational trauma that just keeps going on and on and on. And it also hate, so a couple of the most homophobic men I ever met, I knew they were sexually assaulted as children by some kind of authority figure too, whether it was a teacher or a minister or whatever. And which is also heartbreaking, right? It's like, well, now you have this whole belief system based on this other person's trauma that's now traumatized you, and it's just it's a mess. So over the last few years with the Me Too movement, did you feel, when all that was happening, did you feel like, hey, wait a minute, this happens to men too? Like, hey, me too? Or were you very supportive of it? And, I don't know if I'm making sense.
I don't know if deep in my head, I always knew, yes, me too. I'm also part of this, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know if it actually gave me the power still to be able to do what it was necessary for me to come out and speak out. Because I still see some of this lack of safe spaces, and I never felt safe enough to be able to come out. You can almost say it came out of the closet, but I never felt felt safe to come out and speak about some of these things, because as you mentioned, some of the people that commit the crimes, some of the men that commit certain crimes, they've also been victims of crimes, right? And I feel that it's a case of most men out there. Men are not bad. Being being masculine is not bad. That's not what is bad. What is bad is what we've created or men have created, right? Like, some certain women don't feel safe walking around out there because we go and harass them and do all these different things. But we don't do it because we want to do it. We almost do it because we have to do it. As men, we have to do some of these things, right? We bully other men because we almost believe that we have to do it so we can feel that we're superior to them. Or almost kind of like gain power over them, because we created this competition between men that we have to be better than other men unless we're not real men. And men are afraid of other men. It's funny, like you see everyone else is afraid of men, but the only thing men is afraid of is other men, because we're afraid of men judging us and putting us down, right? So I knew that even if I could be open enough to talk to maybe a woman about this and all this different thing, I never felt safe talking to another man about this, because I just never thought that I could have that space to actually be myself without being judged, without feeling embarrassed and all this shame feelings that will come to you, right? So there's certain movements that have been now out there through the years that are promoting men's mental health that I never necessarily felt that they were right for me, because they're more followed. Those movements are more followed by women sometimes than they're actually followed by men. So you're like, well, if they don't do it, I'm not going to do it, right? Like, just I stay on this dark side instead of actually going to the bright side, because even maybe becoming part of that movement will make me look weak.
Right. So you're still stuck in the stigma a bit.
I mean, not anymore.
Oh, okay.
Now,
Okay.
no, not anymore. Now I've actually like understand that, and this is part of the reason why I'm coming out like this and speaking with people, right? Saying no, not anymore. Like, now I understand. I use this word and phrase a lot of times during the book, and say I regain my power and I hold my power now. For a long time, I allowed someone else to took my power and to do whatever they wanted with that, and I allowed so many people to do these things. Not anymore. Now I hold my power. I understand that that's not how it is, and I want to be that inspiration or that encouragement to other men to understand that no, we can be free. And I've actually created, you could say, a quote that I try to make it part of my life, because I do believe, and the quote is like this. It says, if by creating safe spaces for men to be vulnerable, we're creating a world where everyone else can be free. And it has, at least for me, it has so much meaning, because I know that there's so many men that sometimes inflict harm to women, but they don't do it because they want to. They do it because it's kind of what it's supposed to. And not just physical harm, but I'm talking also about emotional harm. We're supposed to be controlling. We're supposed to be jealous. We're supposed to be
aggressive,
like, possessive, aggressive. I mean, the only thing that is socially acceptable for men to do to show their emotions is to show anger and to be aggressive. And in the rants, in our rants, so many people become victims. Like, that could be our children, because we don't know how to control their emotions or express our emotions. So whenever we're mad at them, either we just scream at them, or many men become physically abusive. And that goes with their partners. So by creating this safe space for men to be vulnerable, we're actually creating, again, a safe space for everyone to be free. And it's almost like the tip of the waterfall, like where if we start changing that mentality on the top, it's going to start going down, and we're going to start affecting so many other areas in a positive way.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. It's so true. No, I met you on Instagram somehow. I think I was watching one of your lives, and I made some quote, and I don't remember what it was, but I remember you really liked it, and then that's how we said.
Yes,
I don't remember what the quote was though.
I used it a few times. So, but you asked me a question.
Oh yes, that's what it was.
And I kept re-asking it then again, right? And the question that you asked me back in that life was, when was the last time I made another man not feel enough?
Ah, yes. Oh, that's a good question.
It was an excellent question. And that's why I kind of stole it from you, because then I said, this is a very good question. And it's so true. How many times do we make other men not feel enough?
Right. Yeah. I know I'm guilty of it still, even after asking that question.
We're all guilty. And I remember when we had that conversation, because we had a live and with Brandon. I don't know if you remember him.
Yeah.
And I remember I told both of you that sometimes is in moments even as silly as when we're in a stoplight and there's another man right beside us.
I got it on the paper to ask you that.
Yeah, and we look at the other man on the other car, and we're just kind of like holding and staring at each other and see who's the one that is gonna kind of turn around first, right? And it's even with little things like that.
Do you still do that?
That's I definitely try not to. I try not to make any other man feel not enough, and I'm not gonna say I'm perfect at it. Like sometimes, like maybe certain things unconsciously do that.
Yeah, I think it's somewhat hardwired in us in a way.
It's even like on things like maybe our voice changing when we're speaking to another man. Maybe when we speak with our wife or our kids, we have a tone of voice that is a little bit more mellow and more soft. And then all of a sudden when we talk to another man, then we try to change it to be a deeper or more like, you could say almost like aggressive tone of voice, so we can leave it clear who is the alpha or who's the most powerful, and it's just silly things, but we do it unconsciously.
Yeah, that's true. We do. Yeah, we do that unconsciously. It's absolutely true. And you were talking about earlier, like your biggest fear is other men, and it's so true too. It's like we're so worried about, like, we have to stick our chests out and do this around other guys, and you don't want to look like the weaker than or the weakest person in the room when you're around other men, and it's so exhausting. And it's such bullshit. Like, you're doing it at stoplights, for crying out loud.
You use the correct term, and that's kind of like what I've been trying to change. Is it's exhausting. It is completely draining to have to play this character for so long, the entire day, and then that's not really who you are, first of all. So it's draining to have to be playing to be someone you're not, and to be pretending, and then all of a sudden realize, who are you? Because now all of a sudden you don't know who you are, because we've been playing that like fictional character for so long that we've actually lost track of who you actually are. At least in my case, for example, like it has taken me such a long time to figure out, okay, who am I? Like, what do I actually like to do? That is not imposed by society, or it's not like the stereotype what I'm supposed to like. What do I actually like to do? And then start to rediscover yourself. But in order to be able to start doing that, we actually have to break out from that stigma and from that box that they've encaged us all, and escape free and say, okay, I don't want to be like this anymore. I don't want to have to be the rough guy all the time that like pretends to be tougher than everyone else just so I can actually look like a real man. Because I mean, first of all, there is no real answer of what a real man is. Like there's about 3 billion something men in the world. That means there's 3 billion something different definitions of what a real man is.
Right. Yeah.
Like how I am is not how you thought are.
Right.
So you are a real man in your own ways. I'm a real man in my own ways. I don't have to be like extremely muscular and be able to bench press like 3 guys in a row just so I could like actually be considered a real man. I could like poetry. I could like to dance.
Dancing? Oh, sorry. I'm kidding.
You see? Yeah, it's all of that.
Yeah, it is exhausting. I'm doing it again. I had a question. I didn't write it down this time. Fuck. Sorry. Now I'm hitting my mic. I'm a mess.
Listen, one of the reasons why when I took a break from the podcast or the live conversations that I was having.
Yeah, I
took a little
that,
bit break because I wanted to kind of like recoup myself, thoughts and ideas and everything. And then I've been putting the energy more into the book situation, getting the book done and getting it out there so I can start again. But one of the reasons why I used to like to do the conversations live was because I wanted to make sure they were raw. There was nothing that, like, whenever you saw them, you know that were true, right? So, like you said, like, I make many mistakes all the time. Like, and I was getting so frustrated sometimes when I was speaking, and I'll hear myself over and over again, and I'm like, you could have said things like this, or you could have done things the other way. You know what? This is how things are in real life.
Yeah, that's right.
and it would be nice if we could have more of this real conversations where, like, you know what, mistakes are going to be made. We're going to maybe like set something the wrong way, and maybe we're going to have to correct ourselves, or we're going to forget a question, but that's how it is. And they're just more genuine.
Yeah, that's true. Speaking of genuine, I remember what I was going to say. So we were talking about how it's actually almost more manly to have our feelings and to talk about this traumas and stuff. I've also found, like, when I am genuinely myself, unapologetically, and I have confidence, and I'm in a room and I'm either speaking or doing whatever, that other men are intimidated by me, even though they may have, like, they might be twice my size, and they, you know what I mean? So in a way, wearing that mask is less masculine than just being 100% genuinely yourself.
Because there's something that we project when we're genuinely ourselves. There's that confidence that it doesn't matter how big you are, how muscular you are, how tall you are, how good looking you are. If you have that, like if you're wearing the confidence and the real confidence, that's like more, as you said, intimidating to some men than being the most handsome, the most strong, the tallest, right? And it is true. And it's being your true self that it is more empowering. And you've seen it, like we've seen it with certain like men out there that they're small, they're like to the beauty standards, maybe not they're as good looking, but you see them with a girl that is like super good looking, and you're like, how did he manage, right? But then you see him talking, you see him walking, and you see the confidence, and you're like, well, no wonder. You know what I mean? Like you can be the most handsome guy, but if your confidence is to the floor, you're not going to project that to everyone else. They're not going to feel attracted to you.
Yeah. Plus, he's probably rich.
That's
That's why he's
the other
confident. So, do you mind talking a little bit about the situation you were in with the female, and you were assaulted, or?
Yeah, no, it's okay. We can definitely talk about that one. So,
because that's something no one talks about. Like I've met one other man that told me that he was assaulted by a woman, like full on sexually assaulted by a woman, which is
so this one
bananas.
This one happened about 5 years ago. So I started doing Uber driving, and I wanted to bring some extra money to the house. I think at that point in time, I had no job. I started a business which didn't work out. Anyways, I started doing Uber, and everything was going fine. But I decided to do Uber at nights because it was kind of like where there's more money to be made, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of these times, I picked up a girl that was extremely intoxicated. And typically, everyone usually likes to sit on the back seat of a taxi or an Uber. But she decided to sit on the front, which it was fine for me. I didn't feel intimidated or I didn't feel bothered, at least at that point in time. And as we were driving, she started to make some very inappropriate comments. And by the time I realized and turned around, she had her pants down and she was masturbating. She invited me to be part of whatever she was doing. I said, no, I'm good. Thank you very much. But I'm not interested. And she kept going. She kept doing her thing. And she kept asking me to, are you sure you don't want to touch me? Are you sure you don't want to be part of this? Are you sure? Blah, 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 blah. I said, yeah, I'm very sure. Thank you. And no. All of a sudden, she started making we go back to certain conversations that we were having at the beginning, and she's like, oh, I wish you were not gay. So immediately, it's this assumption that the reason why I don't want to touch her is because I'm gay.
Right. So she's going to belittle you into action.
And this is not coming even from another man. It's coming from a girl calling me gay because I don't want to touch her. Right. So at this point, I asked her already to stop. I said, I don't want to be part of this. And then you should stop whatever you're doing. The next thing that happened left me speechless in many ways and left me frozen in many ways. She pulled her hands off from her private area and she put her hand all over my face.
Oh, man.
So at that point in time, I didn't see it that way, or immediately I didn't see it that way, but I was kind of like frozen for some time. And then I said, you need to stop this. And then she did it once more. And this time she didn't do it in my face. She did it in my hand. She rubbed it all over my hand. I was driving a manual car. So I had my hand on the stick shift, and then she all of a sudden put her hand in my hand and like put all her fluids in me.
Eesh.
Thankfully, we were close by to her house and dropped her off, asked her to leave. I stood a few minutes in the car Then another incident happened. She had some bags, so she put them on the trunk. And when she took her stuff out, she took some of, like, there was a bag with some clothes that was mine, and she took it as well. So I asked her to bring it, like leave it. And anyways, she started like running and say, "Oh, leave me alone," blah, blah, blah. I let it go. I just sit on the car. I called the driving company and I asked them, I said, "Listen, like, this just happened." And they were they were useless. They absolutely didn't provide any help at all. I called the police. The police absolutely never showed up. So I stood in my car for a little bit, and I was kind of like thinking of everything, recapping everything that had happened. I knew I could just go somewhere to wash my face and just kind of like continue on with my day. But then I couldn't wrap myself around that. I went home. My wife was already sleeping because it was late. It was like 2, 3 in the morning. I came home. I went directly into the shower, and I spent probably like 30 to 40 minutes in the shower, just letting the water fall off. Right. And it was mainly because there was plenty of feelings coming out that were almost flashbacks. They were like, why didn't you do anything? Why didn't you stop it? Could you have stopped it? And all of a sudden I was feeling again on this unworthiness from before. And I was like, okay, now this woman just literally assaulted me and put all her vaginal liquids in my face. And I mean, maybe this is a little more superficial, but you have a beard. I have a beard. I tried to take care of my beard. I love my beard. And all of a sudden I was like, whoa, like I have all this, should I shave it? But I don't want to because I love it. It's part of me. And all of a sudden, all these different things that started to come out of your head. And I stayed on the shower for so long trying to, like, I explained on the book, it's almost washing away the dirtiness that I felt.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just, yeah, it was traumatic, and it was the flashbacks. But I think the worst thing comes after, because eventually I woke up, my wife wakes up, I share with her what happened. And she's like, we need to go to the police and report it. And I said, nah, forget about it. And she's like, no, we need to go because, and she made a good point. She's like, what if she remembers things a different way? So I agreed with her eventually. I said, okay, fine, let's go to the police station. We went to the police station. And when I went to the police, when I was in the counter or the front desk, I mentioned to the officer that was there what happened. And it was ridiculous to see the response. He basically laughed of what happened. And he said, just take a seat. Someone will come and take care of you. So eventually another officer came down, and I saw them chit-chatting. The officer that was at the desk pointed at me, and then both of them laughed. So at this point, I'm already knowing that I shouldn't have come, because these guys are just making a fool of myself, and they're like laughing at my expense. When the police officer comes to me, he asked me, okay, tell me what happened. So I tell him my story all over again. The first question that he asked me, was she drunk? And I said, yes, she was intoxicated. But I mean, what does that question have to do with this? I mean, I said, if a man was intoxicated, this wouldn't have been an excuse. Mm-hmm. So it's like, no. I'm just asking questions. I need to get some information from my records. And then he asked me, was she good looking? I said, once again, I don't understand where this question is coming from, or what does it have to do with what happened? It doesn't matter if she's good looking or bad looking. So I said to him, what you're telling me is that maybe if she was good looking, I wouldn't have been here, and I would have just proceeded to have fun with her. I said, I understand that this sounds funny to you because I am a 6-foot-something guy coming and reporting a sexual assault from a female. And for you, you find it funny. I said, but if the roles would have been reversed, I would be in handcuffs right now. And I said to him, I will be behind bars for doing that to a woman.
100%. Even if you were good looking.
Even if I was good looking. but so this is where, for me, what's the most shocking is the double standards that we have, and the treatment and how serious we take when a man comes forward and speaks about, then this is what I was like kind of like expressing myself in the sense that there's no safe spaces. I cannot even go to the police and be treated seriously when someone assaulted me sexually.
Yeah.
As a man.
Yeah.
Because then I am made little and almost like made fun of. Not almost, I was made fun of for reporting something that for me at least was traumatic and was not welcomed. And I mean, I'm sure that any woman that would have experienced something like this would have described it the exact same way, traumatic. Like all of a sudden, this guy's fluids are in my face. Like, what kind of like experience is that?
100%.
So, and this is the problem. We don't have the safe spaces for men to come forward. And maybe mine was not as severe, or my experience with that sexual assault as an adult was not as severe as other adults encountered.
Mm-hmm.
But there's plenty of cases that could be worse, or even if they're not worse, but they're traumatic.
100%. Yeah, you can't compare trauma and pain. I mean, trauma is trauma, and if you got traumatized by it, you were traumatized by it. Just because she didn't do something more graphic doesn't make it any less traumatic.
And I know that one of the main reasons why for me was more, at least create a higher impact, was because I was already a victim of a full-on rape when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So obviously this kind of like just like opened a bottle of feelings and let many things out that already were in there. But it was all that feeling of unworthiness. Why didn't you do something? Like maybe when you were younger, like you were a kid, you couldn't defend yourself. But now you're a full adult. You could have stopped her.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And many things make you question yourself. And the funny thing was that one of the other things that I was questioning myself was, should I had actually participated on her activity? Because I mean, she called me gay for not doing it. So would have a real man actually gone and just, I mean, she was asking for it. Why didn't I just do it?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm actually not a real man because she never, like, I didn't want it to be part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's many things that you start to re-question yourself. And why didn't I do it? Like, why am I even reporting this? Like, why am I weak by reporting this? So there's many things that obviously happen, right? But for me, the most impactful thing was the fact on the lack of response from our police department, or in this case, from my local police department, to a report of a sexual abuse from a female to a male.
Mm-hmm. So nothing more came of it?
Nothing. It just ended there.
Fuck. Well, you get huge respect for me for going to the police and reporting it and for talking about it and for writing your book. I think it's courageous. I think it's brave. I think it's 100%. You're right. If there are safe places, I'm not exactly sure where they are. Have you found any place yet that's you feel safe?
I mean, you know what? Like, there is nowadays. There's areas, or there's places, or there's people that is talking more about this, right? I mean, I think one of the, if I'm not mistaken, the way that we found ourselves was, as you mentioned, through Instagram, and kind of like it was kind of a little chain of events that led to that moment. But the one that started it was, I was part of an Instagram live as well with a guy that I think you know his name, Justin Baldoni. Mm-hmm. And is a guy that wrote a book. It's a TV personality, and he wrote a book that is called Man Enough. And he expressed a lot of the same feelings of growing up, being a man, trying to fit in the box. And I was on a live conversation with him. He was having the live, and then he was having some people, like, letting people join. So I was able to join that live. And out of that live, then I got an invitation from being on another live with a doctor, a neuroscientist, and she invited me to be there. And I think you were watching that podcast.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And then that's kind of like how the chain of events happened. So even the fact that, for example, this individual, Justin Baldoni, has his podcast and he has his book called Man Enough, that's already a safe space. I mean, obviously, seeing seeing some TV personalities coming out and speaking about mental health and men's mental health, and the need for us to provide these spaces and to create these spaces, it's almost like an approval for us to start doing it, right? So then you start finding other people that are that share the same feelings. And I've been able to find some of the safe spaces also now through some new friends that I've made through this path, right? So this path of healing and through this path of trying to help other men. And then you start creating this little community, right? But I know that there's many men that don't have access to any of this, and many men that live their lives almost walking like zombies, because they go to work, they go to home, they'll go home, sleep, go to work, go home, sleep. During the weekend, they just get drunk, or they get like drugs and whatever. And then they try to numb a lot of these feelings, but they're not healed. They're not healing. In fact, they're just bottling more things up. They're bottling the fact that maybe at work people are bullying them, or they're making fun of them, and then they come home and maybe they don't have the respect from their wife or their children, or they don't feel any of this, and that makes them aggressive, that makes them violent. And you see many of the domestic violent cases coming from men like this that sometimes don't feel validated. They're not validated outside of the house, they're not validated inside the house, and they just try to find ways to feel worthy. And sometimes aggression is the only way that they can show some of these things or gain some of this respect that they crave so much. And I see it even within my circle of friends, my family, my father itself, right? So I know there is now some, not that there's many, but there's some safe spaces. And in a safe space, I guess not necessarily has to be a physical space. It could be a person, right? It could be a good friend. But that creates this safe area for you to go and talk and express yourself. But I know that there's many of us that even if there's like, let's say 10 safe spaces in Canada, it's not enough for the amount of men that we are. So if we start creating a bigger safe space or more little safe spaces, you're just going to have a higher impact.
I agree. I think a lot of people's safe spaces start by just opening up, not having a safe space, and just start talking. And then the safe space kind of grows around them. Other people come out of the woodwork and start to gravitate towards you. And kind of like you said on Instagram, you just kind of came out and started talking about it. And now you've got this nice little community. And it would be nice if everybody did that, then everywhere would be a safe space.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, thanks, man. I'm out of questions. So I think we did it,
No,
man.
I appreciate you giving me this space and asking me to join your podcast. I know that you've done such a great job with it, and not just with the podcast, but with you speaking about like mental health and your struggles with depression. And I feel that we should all, as you said, if we all did it, if we all gave ourselves the opportunity to like express ourselves and opening up to everyone else, we will make a huge impact on the lives of many of our brothers out there, and we will create a world where like at least more of us could feel welcomed, and where we could feel that we're not going to be judged or put to shame for the ways we feel or act or behave. And we will make a change for everyone. So I appreciate you. I appreciate what you're doing and giving me this space. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. As always, I enjoy speaking with you, and I look forward to doing an Instagram Live with you sometime again. And if you want to check out his book, Men Get Raped, it's not out yet, but it'll be out soon, hopefully before summer. And you can follow him on Instagram. I will put his Instagram handle in the show notes, so you can be sure to find that there and follow Emmanuel there. Speaking of Instagram, don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Bunny Hugs Podcast, and on TikTok at Bunny Hugs Podcast, and on Facebook, Bunny Hugs and Mental Health. Also, please check out my friend's podcast, John Cerrone, and it is the Feel Free Podcast. Feel Free is a general wellness podcast run by John Cerrone, a recovering addict with a mission to help people better understand their habits so they can achieve their true potential in order to chase their dreams. With the help of some charismatic guests, the topics and conversations covered range from addiction, diet, exercise, burnout, to mental health, and many more. That's Feel Free with John Cerrone. Please stay tuned in the following weeks. I got so many wonderful guests lined up. So many I've already talked to. And follow me on Instagram to watch the lives, because I have so many people that I'm going to be talking to with on there as well. So I'm busy. There you go. Oh, please rate and review the podcast as well on Apple Podcast or wherever you're listening. It is very, very important. And another thing that is very, very important to remember is to make your beds and take your meds. Bye.